So, hello everyone again, and welcome to the second session of the NTalks 3.0. As you may know, this is a series of webinars that are included in the Nexus Academy agenda, and they are focused on the energy transition, digitalization, and modernization of logistics activities in the maritime port context. Okay. The first editions, the first edition and the second edition, are available in the link of the academy. I just put it on the chat, so you can see the first two editions and the first session of this edition also. Okay. Today we will have with us Andreas Nestrader. He's CEO of the Open Logistics Foundation. Thank Andres for being here. For the next 40 minutes, Andres will explain how collaborative innovation and open source approaches are shaping the next generation of logistics and port operations. Okay, not only in Portugal but in Europe and globally. So once again, Andres, thanks for your availability. And please proceed with your presentation and with the movement that you represent, the Open Logistics Foundation. Okay, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction, and also from my side a warm welcome to all of you. I'm Andreas. I'm working for the Open Logistics Foundation. I originally studied computer science, then worked quite a long time in research and development in logistics. And since 2022, I'm the CEO of the Open Logistics Foundation. We are located in Germany, so I'm personally from Dortmund, in the Ruhr area in Germany, and I will use the next few minutes to give you an overview of what we are doing, because as Joao said, I think it's a quite interesting approach, and I'm quite sure that you will find a lot of similarities to what you are doing in your daily work. Just as a very short introduction, so why am I here? The Open Logistics Foundation was founded end of 2021. So this was still when Corona was quite active everywhere. So we were founded by 4 big logistic companies, Rhenus, Schenker, Daxa, and the Port of Duisburg. And those companies founded us as a non-profit and common benefit foundation. So this means we are not for profit, and we don't offer any commercial services or have a business model in behind. We are fully financed by our members, so other companies who are supporting us, they are paying something like a yearly fee, and by that we are financed and can work for the companies. They founded us because, and this I think is the interesting part of the story, they founded us as a neutral partner for co-opetition. What does that mean? This means that they all realized that in digitalization of logistics, there are always bigger overlaps between your company and other companies, and often they are competitors of yours, but still there would be a greater benefit for all of the companies if we just agree on something, especially for the interfaces. And if we agree on something, especially when it's non-market differentiating. And when looking at software in logistics, I think nearly 80% of what is used as software in logistics is not really market differentiating. This means a customer is not paying you because you have such and such IT system, or a customer is not paying you because, I don't know, you have your own tracking events, or your driver app looks the most nicest. Normally, you need to have the software, and you need to have it to run your operations, but it's not the case that you should be highly individual here, or anyone would say, it's great that you are doing it slightly different than all the other ones. I think it's a bit like we always have this example of the light in the refrigerator. So if you open the door, the light should go on and you should see what you still have left for eat. But this is nothing, if you want to sell the refrigerator, this is nothing which you would put on the first point and say, look, a light is going on. So, and I think this is a typical commodity functionality. It should be there. You need it for your operations, or a customer would be, let's say, disappointed if you are not offering this service, but you will not earn any extra money with that. And I think this is the interesting thing in logistics, that there are hundreds of those examples where exactly this definition falls in. And therefore, they said, we need a neutral partner who is helping us to develop those things and who's helping us to publish those things, so that in the end, there are clear rules, there is a clear framework for the cooperation, and we make sure that a solution or software or components or a data model is not owned by an individual company. It is owned by us as a non-profit organization, and we make sure that everyone can use the results without any license fees or whatever, so that it's really free, and very important, that it will also stay free, so that not one of the partners can step out and say, I don't like you all no longer and you are not allowed to use my stuff. This is not possible because we are owning the results, and as I said, as a non-profit, we are just publishing them. And this is more or less also, let's say, the transition to our vision. We think that open source solutions, and what does open source mean? I will come to that in a few minutes, that free open source solutions will help to shape the industry standards. Why help, or why to shape the industry standards? I think it's a good idea to agree on standards, but I think it's even a better idea to do the implementations which are needed to use this standard together, so that it's not that you have something like 60 pages describing a common standard, but you have the 60 pages, and in addition, you have something like a software library or components or a platform or a framework, so that you don't need to re-implement the standard. It's the documentation plus an implementation, so that you easily can use the stuff and really use it in your own applications. And our mission, so we are just a very small part in this vision, we are trying to build this community where we make sure that every voice is heard and that this is really a collaborative development. This means we make sure that everyone can benefit from the open source software and services, but also that everyone can include their experiences and can work on those open source software services. I already mentioned we are not doing this on market differentiating services. This is, of course, where companies should do their own stuff. If it's your USP, don't do it as open source and don't publish it, because then it's no longer your USP. But as I said, I'm quite sure that there is a huge amount of non-market differentiating services. And I think this is the interesting part, that we say we should collaborate where it's possible, and we should differentiate where really customers are interested in a differentiation, or where, of course, you are different because you have a unique selling point here. Of course, what we try to do is step away from this silo thinking. So if we really want to become more efficient in logistics, I'm quite convinced that this can only be done cross companies or across company borders. You can optimize yourself and your own company up to a specific height, but if you really want to use the effects of scale, I think this can only be done together, or at least in a larger group of companies. And I think this is also something we often see, that a lot of effort and budget is just wasted by re-implementing the wheel, by just integrating new interfaces, by using all of your software development capacities to include just another customer system, just another supplier system. If you get a new customer, you have something like 2 or 3 weeks of IT integration projects, and the IT developers don't like this because they want to do more interesting stuff. And also the customers, and often you yourself, don't like it because it's not generating any benefit for anyone. It's just software integration for integrating different data models or systems with each other. So now, why open source? I think logistics and open source is not the most logical things to combine, but I think, and this will build the bridge to open source now, that in logistics, the companies were quite successful in the past to agree on physical standards. So if you look at something like a pallet or the maritime container, they were all agreed on, and especially the story of the maritime container, and you know it quite better than me, I guess, with Malcolm McLean, who had the idea of standardizing or using a container so that everyone becomes more efficient. So it was the idea that the shippers become more efficient, but also the terminals in the port become more efficient. And he directly understood that if he's keeping the knowledge for himself, that this is not really helping because it needs to be implemented and used by as many people as possible. So he published or he transferred his rights on the maritime container to the ISO group because he said they are the right ones to be the IP holder. And by that, he made sure that everyone could use his idea of the maritime container. And I think if you just imagine how the ports and terminals would look like if there were no containers, it would still be chaotic. You don't know how the ship was loaded, how to unload it, how many people you would need, which tools are needed. And by using the container as the module or the component around the goods, everything went much more smoother and really fostered the collaboration. And I think now, thinking about the virtual or the digital world, I think we are more or less facing the same problem. We have hundreds of different IT systems. They are all not compatible. They cannot easily communicate with each other, at least not without a huge amount of integration effort. And what we are looking for is something like the digital things of a digital alternative of the maritime container for the IT industry. And I think open source is the perfect solution for that because in open source you need to agree on something. It's published, everyone can use it, often for free, and it makes everything easier because just look at email or other standards which are out there. You don't care who is sending you an email, you just care that you can read it and that you can answer it. And I think this is something which we also need to achieve for digital logistics, that in the end, you don't care which platform you are using or your customer is using, but you can communicate with him, you can collaborate with him easily. And for that, in the IT world, open source is already everywhere. There was an interesting, so I also linked to this study here. There's an interesting study from last year where the colleagues from the Harvard Business School made a quite huge report and tried to investigate what is the value of open source, because the costs are often zero. Open source doesn't cost when using it, but the value is quite immense and large. And they had an interesting number that 96% of the code base of all software available is already including open source. So this means there is no software without open source. And I think this is really interesting because you can see even when using proprietary systems or using your iPhone or whatever, it's already including a lot of open source components. Often they are not visible to you, but in the background they are working. And there is this famous quote of a quite famous venture capitalist who said, software is eating the world. And 10 years later, in 2022, another famous venture capitalist said that open source is eating software faster than software is eating the world, which means open source has such a huge influence on everything what is done in the digital world that it's more or less the most important cornerstone for every kind of digital system or software. Another interesting thing was that, as I said, they wanted to investigate what could be the value of open source. And they had something like the total demand side value of open source is something around $8.8 trillion, which is a huge number. But I think even more interesting is that they say without open source, every kind of software would cost 3.5 times more than it's currently costing. And I think this is an interesting perspective, because if you now imagine in logistics, not in the IT or infrastructure side, but in logistics IT, there is not really open source used. If you build a warehouse management system, you are normally starting from scratch and you do the definition of how does a storage rack look like, and how do I manage incoming goods and outgoing goods and whatever. Or if you are I don't know, implementing a new terminal operating system, you are the ones making sure that I need time slot. What does a time slot mean? How can I implement it? And often those functionalities are not really differentiating. You need to have them, but in logistics, everyone reinvents the wheel. And if you now would think about if in IT it's 3.5 times more cost, if more expensive without open source. So this is the number which is the one for logistics, because open source is not really used on the logistical level, of course on the IT level, but not on the logistical level. And this is what we want to change here, that we can say we can raise the efficiency, especially for digital logistics, a huge by agreeing on joint components and open source. And just, I'm quite sure you already heard about it, but just to make sure, what does open source mean? Open source typically means you are free to redistribute your stuff. So the distribution of source code and the creation of derived works. This means you have the right to distribute it and you have the right to modify it. So you can use open source as the basis, and yes, you are free to change it. Normally, there should be a clear licensing. And this means there are transparent terms for the use and distribution. Typical licensees from open source are, for example, the Apache license or MIT license or GPL. So those are the most famous open source licensees, I think. And they all have in mind that they clearly state what you are allowed to do and clearly state what you are not allowed to do. And those licensees, and especially open source, not always means that if you use open source, you also need to become open source yourself. No, this is not the case. There is a clear differentiation between, they are called the copyright and copyleft licensees. So there are a lot of licensees like Apache, which clearly state you are free to use it in a commercial way. You are free to use it in your own implementations. And no, you don't need to publish all of your own work. It's not just you are using them and that's it. Of course, also quite interesting, especially in the current times, in the current political times, no discrimination. So open source is open for everyone, and normally there is not a gatekeeper who's deciding if you are allowed to use open source or not. I think this is also quite interesting, especially when everyone talks about resilience or digital sovereignty. I think open source is one of the absolutely basic enablers for resilience, because you are not relying on proprietary and commercial systems. And of course, it should be technology and product neutral. So it's not like it says, but you need to use this and this product so that it can be used. It should be more or less free how you use it and with which technology you are using it. And therefore, we say, especially in logistics, and for us, logistics means 100% logistics. And this, of course, includes also supply chain management. But I think, especially when looking at end-to-end logistics, teamwork is required. The customer doesn't care about the single transport modes. Normally, he orders something and wants it in his warehouse or at his manufacturing site or whatever, at the best way how to get there. And therefore, we need teamwork, because in the end, logistics needs intermodal transports, and intermodal transports normally mean you need to collaborate with different companies, and often you need to collaborate with your competitors. This cannot be avoided in in logistics. We think that this open community of combining transport service providers, but also software companies and also platform operators will bring a greater benefit for all of them because they share different viewpoints, they share different ideas, and by discussing and agreeing on something, normally the result should be much more mature than the single idea of just one company or just one industry. What we also do, and I'll come to the topics right after this slide, all of our topics, which I will present in a few minutes, they are defined by our member companies. They have a need and they are looking for other people who share the same need. And therefore, we are working jointly on those ideas. There is not one setting the agenda. It's really it's really coming out of the companies themselves. As I said, co-opetition. We think that it's a good idea to collaborate even when you are competitors on commodities and not on market differentiating features. And everything what we are doing with our companies is published for free in our repository. So you don't, I will share the link later on. You don't need to register. You don't need to be approved by anyone. You can just use the stuff we are developing and or our companies are developing, and by that integrate it into your own systems. So I will also share in the chat the link to the repository. The topics we currently take care, and I think some of the topics are also highly relevant for the maritime sector because normally also the containers and the goods need to get out of the terminal and out of the ports, and this is in the most cases done by road transport. So I think that there are already a lot of links here. Our first working group is dealing with electronic transport documents. We started with the eCMR, so the digital consignment node, which is needed for every road-based cross-border transport within Europe and even a lot of other countries around Europe. So every truck crossing a border currently needs to have a CMR, a paper document. We are trying to get away from the paper, switching to the digital one. This is the so-called eCMR. And again, here, the story is quite easy. If you want to use transport documents in a digital way, everyone should be able to accept them. Everyone should be able to read them, to validate them, and to legally sign them. And I think this is the biggest problem on most of the solutions which are currently available, that you need to decide for a dedicated platform. And if your customer or your supplier or whoever is using a different platform or no platform, they are normally not able to use the same solution. And I think this is one of the reasons why the usage of digital transport documents is really low, but the efficiency gains are really high. So this is interesting, again, to see what can be done here and what is the main blocker. And interestingly, for electronic transport documents, and especially eCMR, it's not the technology, it's the blocker, it's the acceptance, because there is not a easy usable solution which can be used by anyone. No one is using the platforms, and therefore we still have this very low acceptance rate, and this is what we wanted to change. I will come to the eCMR in more detail because this is an interesting example. What we also do is digital air cargo. We are, for example, collaborating with the IATA when it's about their new data model called One Record. We have a reference implementation here, which is free to use. We are trying to work together with authorities on making more efficient customs. Also there, we currently have a data pilot running with UK, with the HMRC, the UK Customs Authority. We are working on track and trace. Track and trace here is, on the one hand, a tracking event model. So which tracking events are currently happening during a transport? Again, focus here, road transport. And we also started a quite new project working on time slot management. especially, and again, it's just the basic stuff. It's about how do you define a time slot? Which information is needed? There is not a standard. It was never agreed on something. And here we are trying to come up with a more or less acceptable model which can be used by anyone and could build the basis for a lot of systems here. And we are also working on a sustainability topic, the Enabling Logistics Decarbonization Working Group. Again, there we are collaborating with the Smart Freight Center, which is quite well known for the GLEC framework and the ISO norm on the how to report logistics emissions. And here we are just want to make sure that everyone agrees on how do we communicate emission-related data along the supply chain, so that in the end you don't have 100 suppliers and everyone is telling you in a slightly different format and a slightly different understanding how much emissions he created, so that you have something like a unique model or description or language which can be used, so that in the end you can use it and that the emissions which were created during the transport are really comparable. Mm. I would like to use the eCMR because this is really an interesting development. We started the idea of having something like decentralized and openly usable eCMR came out of a research project in Germany. But during the runtime of the research project, it became quite sure that acceptance is the biggest issue here. It's not about finding a clever solution, it's the acceptance. And therefore, the research project spent or donated the source code and the current work to our working group. It was published at this time, and we were quite happy because it created a huge interest in industry. And we already had 1 year later the first industry pilot using the eCMR source code between Renus and DAXA. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the German logistics service providers, but they are direct competitors, more or less the same size. And but we found a use case where Renus was operating a warehouse in Berlin and DAXA was doing the transports for this warehouse. So even if they are competitors, same size, whatever, we found quite easily use cases where they are forced to collaborate because they share transports, they share warehouses, or they share customers. And this was quite an interesting pilot because I guess if it works for direct competitors, for the rest it will be much more easier. In last year, we were looking for a good solution how to make sure that the digital signatures used at the electronic documents are legally compliant all over Europe. And we started to investigate the use of the EIDAS compliant electronic seals. This is quite interesting. The seals, in comparison to the electronic signatures, are focusing on companies. So it's a bit like this traditional stamp a company can put on a document, and the electronic seal is something like this electronic version of this stamp. That's not really true. The electronic seal, of course, is much more secure and has much more functionalities. But the idea is that we do not sign the documents in the name of an individual person. We sign those documents in the name of the company. And this also makes the complexity much lower and a lot easier to establish the usage of those components. This year, mid of this year, we published a lot of new components which are ready to use. And currently we have several pilots up and running. As I said, Renus is using a lot of the open source components for their hub-to-hub transports. Daxer is now starting a pilot with an end customer. We have some IT companies like Markant from Germany, Collect and Go from the Netherlands, or Editel from Austria, who are also investigating if they should include our open source components to become more compliant and also more compatible to the other partners. And of course, as you know, software is always a process. So we are quite sure that we will find new features, additions, and changes while scaling up the usage of the eCMR. And what we did, and this what was really not rocket science, this was something like some easy components, I would say. We wanted to build a decentralized system. So there is not a single platform. We don't get any information about the eCMR. They are not shared with a data lake or whatever. They will stay on your platform, but by using our components and connecting our components to your platform, you are able to exchange the data with other platforms doing the same. So it's I would say, quite federated way on data sharing. I already shared the link to the repository for the eCMR. Just to give you an impression, we shared or we published an eCMR data model. We shared an eCMR instance, including a front end, including a back end, and including two APIs. One API for sharing your eCMR with other platforms and instances, and the other API is for importing the data needed for the eCMRs, like from your TMS or WMS or ERP system, so that you don't need to do a lot of work. You just need to implement the API, export some data, and then you have an up and running eCMR. And we also published our solution for the usage of the advanced electronic seals, which allows you to sign eCMRs as a legal entity and also to verify signed eCMRs. And we used a quite clever thing here, because we are linking the different signatures with each other. This means we get something like a functionality like a blockchain, but without the need to operate the blockchain. This means if the first signature is on the document and the second signature is added, we just include the checksum of the full first document, including the first signature, into the second one. And by that, we get something like a linked list of the different versions and of the different signatures. And by that, you can make sure at the end that every signature is still valid, no data has been changed in between, and that data integrity was ensured. What we also thought about is it could be good to have a deployable and fully operational instance. You can just download it, deploy it, and use it. But as I said, some other companies already have platforms and already have systems with a similar functionality. And for that, we also made all those components individually usable. If you're interested, but I need to warn you, you should be a software developer to understand this. This is the direct link into the repository where you find all the components I just described. They are fully documented. As I said, they are ready to use. But of course, they are still under development because we are currently scaling up. So if eCMR is an interesting topic for you, I would be happy if you reach out and contact me. Perhaps we can do something together, or you can also build a pilot or collaborate with the already mentioned companies by setting up the eCMR, because I think this need to be done together. Otherwise, we'll stick to paper even for the next 15 or 25 years. And why I'm telling you this, because I think also for the maritime industry, the full potential of collaboration can only be done together. So we need those joint components. And I think it's important that we don't talk about just standards. We need to talk about those components so that you easily can use them. You don't need to invest a huge amount of money before being able to check if this is really usable for you, if it's working or not. And I think therefore open source components, which can be downloaded, are a quite good solution. And therefore, we as the Open Logistics Foundation are providing this, let's say, interactive playing field, let's call it like that way. We help companies to develop open source solutions. We don't have our own software developers. It's the developers from the companies, the same ones who are currently implementing all the components and software, but without talking to anyone. And we are trying to bring them together so that they first talk to each other, agree on something, and then start implementing. In the best case, start implementing with each other and not doing it on their own. For that, as I said, we are already a quite interactive and diverse community, but we are open to everyone who is sharing the same ideas, and we provide a neutral space for collaboration. This means we take care about competitive compliance rules. We make sure that IP is managed in the right way so that you don't need to deal with who is owning which part of the software and am I allowed to use it or not. This is everything what we are taking care of this. We take care of the project organization. We take care of the communication. And we also take care of the marketing for the open source components so that hopefully it's not just you using them, but that it's a broader audience knowing about the solutions and are willing to use them. And at the end, just to give you an impression, those are the current members we are having. I think it's a quite interesting mixture of different companies. I think we now have partners from more than 12 different countries who are collaborating. Our working language is English, so it's not German, it's English. All the documentation is in English. And we are organized in those working groups I already present you. And those working groups have always an industry lead from one of those member companies, and they have regular meetings. So I think this is the interesting thing. If any of those topics are relevant for you, again, feel free to reach out. What you need to do, and I think this is also an interesting information, and I will also share the link in the chat. If you think it's good to collaborate and you are still looking how to do it, you should reach out, because this is exactly what we did during the last 4 years. As I said, to use the results we are producing, you don't need to become a member. It's free for everyone, no license fees, just download it, use it, change it, whatever, we don't care. But sometimes I would say the way sometimes is more interesting than the result. And if you want to become part of the discussions, so if you want to understand why in eCMR we choose the electronic seal and not the electronic signature, then you should become a member. Then you are allowed to become part of the working groups. Then you are invited to the events. And then you also become part of the community. You can exchange with the other ones. You can bring in your own ideas for your software and components, and also make sure that you understand what the others are doing and what you should do and how to do it. So therefore, if you're interested, I shared the link again in the chat, how to join. We are quite, I would say, easily organized. If you want to become a member, you need to pay a yearly membership fee, and the membership fee is following your turnover. So the larger you are, the higher the membership fee will be, but everything is listed on the webpage. So if you're interested, just follow the link. And for that, I would say thank you very much. I would be happy if you have some questions, or we can discuss about some things you currently heard. I'm also open if you disagree, of course. But now, thanks for your time. And I'm happy to have shown you the Open Logistics Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas. It seems quite a, a big challenge to bring all these organizations working together and sharing or cooperating in their work and what they do. So thank you very much for sharing. Now we have some space for questions. Please, you can write your questions on the chat. I will read it, and Andres, of course, will answer the better for your doubts. So we already had a first question during the presentation. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's a plethora of licensing models.
Yeah.
Which one is Open Logistics Foundation using?
That's a good question. It's the first rule in open source is don't do your own license, but we did for some good reasons. So we are using the Open Logistics Foundation license. It's really called like that. But we are quite happy, and I can also share this with you. We were approved by the Open Source Initiative to be a fully, yeah. So here you can follow the link, then you find the license and also the official approval of the Open Source Initiative. We did our own license, or we didn't do our own license. This is not true, but we did we tried to change existing licenses because most of the licenses used in open source are following the US legal system. And there are some differences between the European understanding. So, for example, when it's about warranty, we don't, we are not liable for anything. In US, you can say that. In Europe, you cannot say this legally. So we changed more or less. We used the Apache license and adapted it to the European understanding of law. And this means we changed mainly the sections on the warranty and on patents. Because again, there is a different understanding between Europe and US. So in easy words, I would say our license is something like a European Apache license, allowing you the free commercial use and whatever. So it's really a free permissive license, but this is what we did.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there is any question, another question from the audience. So please write it. I have one question. For you, what is the, in fact, it's two questions in one. For you, what is the main challenge that companies faces when they want to do the transition or to adapt to the open source components or solutions? And also, so in the perspective of the companies, what is the main challenge? And in the perspective of the person that want to implement it, what is the main problems that you face when you approach the organizations?
Mm-hmm. I think a big challenge for the companies is really in if they switch to use more open source, if they are also thinking about contributing to open source, one hard thing is that they need to think about what is my USP. So this border between differentiating and not differentiating. And often many companies say everything what we do is differentiating us from the competitors, which in most of the cases is not true. But you are forced to think about what is my differentiator and what not. And often this is something like it hurts to go through this process because you need to be honest to yourself. I think this is really something they need to think about and need to decide and need to find a solution for. This is really something like the hardest discussion, I would say, they often have internally. And then, of course, it's about a different understanding of the traditional business models. So especially if we talk to IT service providers, if they see open source as a danger for their current business model, because they say currently we earn money with selling software, but what if we use open source or there is open source available? But again, also there, I think it's just changing your current business model. No? It's more about, okay, you are not the implementer of this functionality, but the customer, again, is often not interested if you implemented it. He's interested in being able to easily use it. So again, it's just a slightly different understanding. And therefore, I think this is the main challenge from the companies. For if we talk to the developers, I think this was your second question, right?
Yeah.
From the developers' point of view, often they are happy to use it because they say, perfect, then I don't need to do it on my own. No, because as I said, most of the stuff we often call it's the boring stuff we do. It's not the things where software developers are happy if they are forced to do it, and they are often not happy if they already know that 25 other companies already implemented it before. And therefore, the IT developers are often quite happy to do it. Sometimes they are afraid, but this is not about using open source. This is more about contributing to open source. They are afraid that their contributions are, of course, publicly visible. So if you have a look at our repository, you can see the developers, for example, from Renus or Fraunhofer or other organizations, they are named there and you can see what was their contribution. And of course, you can see if the quality was high or not that high. So this is something like, let's say, a personal fear from some of the developers that they don't know no, how this will look like if they do provide good quality or not. But I think normally using it, they are happy. Contributing, we need some more discussions until they are happy again.
Okay, thank you. Also, you talked during the presentation about the neutrality of that you have to be. How the Open Logistics Foundation ensures the trust and neutrality among the diverse stakeholders?
I would say it's really because of the community. So we perhaps this is by accident, I don't know, but because we have open source in our name and because we always say it's about collaboration, we only attract a specific type of person. They are willing to collaborate and they are happy to discuss with other ones. Therefore, our community is very friendly and open for discussions, and there was never a trust issue. And we also do 2 physical events a year where the people meet personally, get to know each other, and we also invest a lot of time and effort so that they can exchange, that they know much better. And by that, we build, I would say, trust on a personal level. Of course, we also have a governance which is neutral, so that also on the governance level, we make sure that not one can dominate the other ones, or there are decisions which are not done. For example, when we start the software development, we typically have 2 maintainers. So the maintainers are the ones receiving the contributions from the software developers, and they are deciding if it should be included in our software or not. And normally we are using 2 maintainers coming from 2 competitors so that we make sure there is this checks and balances. No? It's not one who's just taking personal decisions. It's always 2 of them with different perspectives, and they both say, okay, yes, and they do. I wouldn't call it they control each other, but no, there are some kind of checks in the process so that it's not one dominating the other ones or telling them what to do or whatever. But it's really about this personal level in the community that we build this trust among the people.
Okay, thank you. So we have here another question. One of the difficulty of open source organizations is being able to comply or be certified in best practice security standards, such as ISO 27001, ISO 27002. Are you pursuing any of these?
Easy answer, no, not yet. But we are also not providing full systems. We are often only providing components which need to be included into your existing system. So this means those ISO norms are more for the full operational system, so your existing platform, and we are just providing components. So therefore, the easy answer is no, because we cannot, because we are only providing those small digital enablers, components, whatever, for the full functionality of your system.
Okay. So I don't know if there is any other question that someone want to put now. Andres, I don't know if you want to add some information, anything about the Open Logistics Foundation, some
I
of your events or something like that.
I I think I already shared the link to some of our pages, so I can also share the main link, but I guess it's easy to find. I can only repeat to say If you are interested, just reach out. We are happy to discuss. I can give you much more details. I can also share some of the stories from the other companies. We can also connect you to the company partners. So if some of the companies mentioned on the slide with the members, if they are already your suppliers, partners, customers, whatever, and you want to test something out with them, we can also connect you to the right people so that they are willing to collaborate and you can do something together with them.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I think we finish now. Once again, thank you for everyone and want to join us today. And a very special thanks to you, Andreas, for your availability to share not only the topic but above all your knowledge and vision about it. It's a very important point. Just for say that for who wish to receive a certificate or receipt of participation, I just shared on the chat the link and someone is telling me that the forms is not accepting answers, so I will correct that. You have the link and the QR code to the forms. Thanks, Carlos Batista. So please, just to say what you think about the webinar or to receive the certification, please click on it. We will be together again the Monday 17. So we will have with us Professor Cipriano Lomba, which will bring us a team of energy optimization in ports. So it's another challenge, another disruptive point of the maritime logistics. So please, you are all invited to join. Thank you for all once again on behalf of me and the Nexus Academy, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Yeah, for you too.